Welcome, everyone. My name is Susan Patterson. I'm a national leader in the fight against human trafficking and author of this book, How You Can Fight Human Trafficking, Over 100 Ways to Make a Difference. This video is part of a three-part series on third world sex and labor trafficking. The other videos include this interview with Destiny Rescue, which covers sex trafficking in the third world, and this interview with Fairtrade LA, who shares how they became the fourth largest fair trade city in the world. In this video today, we'll cover the power of advocacy. You will be inspired by the difference people are making. The International Labor Organization tells us that out of the 40 million slaves in the world, 2/3 are labor trafficking victims, which mainly happens in the third world. Often children who are labor trafficked do not reach adulthood. They are literally worked to death. Like the children who are kidnapped from their villages and then taken hundreds of miles away to live in a hut where they are chained to a rug making machine and only fed a banana and gruel for the day. We're talking about young children here, as their little fingers are more efficient at making rugs. Their fingers are often bleeding by the end of the day, so they burn them to cauterize the wounds so they can work again tomorrow. If this disturbs you, then do listen to the rest of this video, as we will tell you what you can do about many different situations where people are being exploited and what organizations are helping them. For rugs, Goodweave created a seal that certifies that the rug was not made by slaves. Fair trade means no child or slave labor was used in the production of the product. Labor trafficking happens mainly in the third world. So if the raw materials and the manufacturing and packaging for the product was made in a developed country like the US, most likely it is slave-free. However, there are sweatshops and farms in the US that use slave labor. But if the entire supply chain happens in a developed country, you don't need to worry about making sure a product has a fair trade label. However, for many products, the raw materials are obtained in a third world country. For instance, coffee, tea, and chocolate are grown in countries that use slave labor, so we need to see a fair trade label for products like these. So what are some of the things we can do? You can ask groups that you may be a member of, like a singles group, if you can do a presentation on the importance of purchasing fair trade products. How about purchasing birthday and holiday gifts that are slave-free? Just Google slave-free gifts. How about hosting a fair trade table at your church or school fair? These fairs attract hundreds or thousands of people. If every school and church did this, we could literally raise awareness overnight. If we can get people to stop purchasing slave-made products, then child and slave labor would end, because labor trafficking is about the money. And if the money stops, exploitation ends. Make sure you have flyers at your table promoting local stores that carry fair trade products. For churches that sell chocolate for Easter, do make sure it is slave-free. Your city, business, church, school, etc. can become a fair trade entity simply by serving fair trade coffee at your place of business, after the service at a church, etc. You can just add the name of your church or school to this flyer, which can be found on the Educational Resource tab at our website, throughgodsgrace.com. Just scroll down to the fair trade section. Best if you have products on your table that can be bought locally. Make sure your school or church sells fair trade chocolate for their fundraisers. You can show a film. 97% of US clothing is made overseas. The movie True Cost is a groundbreaking documentary film that pulls back the curtain on an untold story and asks each of us to consider, who pays the price for our clothing? This is a great film to show at a school or faith community. You can take the test at slaveryfootprint.org. This is a fun and very powerful exercise to do with a youth group or during a class at school. You can have the students download the app and take the 5-minute test and then discuss it. I was shocked by how many products I had in my house that were made by slaves. It was a great wake-up call. Slavery Footprint also has a platform with a blueprint so companies can help identify high-risk areas for trafficking suppliers. Use your imagination to raise awareness. You can make t-shirts, reusable bags, water bottles, etc. as a way to raise awareness. Pictured here is the bag we created. The possibilities are endless and fun. If this is your passion, attend a conference. Attending a conference can empower you to be a powerful leader in the fight. Connecting with like-minded people is inspiring and empowering. The good news is that we are making progress. As a result of all the letter writing and social media campaigns, companies are becoming more responsible to not exploit people for labor. Some examples are Hershey's, Nestle's, Dove Chocolate, Cadbury, Starbucks, Whole Foods, and Nike. Starbucks purchases 3% of the world's total coffee. So for the people who took the time to write to Starbucks to encourage them to be slave-free, it made a big difference. Starbucks coffee is ethically sourced, meaning the Starbucks company itself is certifying that none of their coffee is grown on plantations that use slaves or child labor. Similar to Starbucks, Whole Foods has their Whole Trade brand, where Whole Foods is certifying that their farmers do not use slave or child labor. It is very expensive for small farmers in countries like Brazil to obtain the fair trade label. So what Whole Foods and Starbucks is doing is helping them out. However, there are those in the fair trade community who would like to see these companies get a third-party certification because they feel it is more trustworthy. What I would like to see is for both Whole Foods and Starbucks to do more to promote that their companies do not use slave labor for their products. Currently for Starbucks, ethically sourced is in small print on their bags of coffee. It would make a big difference to the families in the third world if companies like Starbucks put up posters in their stores promoting that their coffee is slave-free with a short explanation as to what fair trade means. Apple joined the Fair Labor Organization in 2012 because of social media campaigns like this one. Before that, many Apple products were made by slaves. So look at the companies that make your cell phone and computers. If their website does not state fair trade or some policy that they absolutely do not use slave or child labor, then write to them. We need to vote with our dollar. At the Fair Trade America website, one can search by company name for who makes fair trade products or find which retailers carry fair trade products. The U.S. is cracking down on companies to be more responsible for their supply chains. As a consumer, you can't focus on everything. Your clothes and coffee, tea and chocolate is where you could start and make a huge difference. 2.25 billion cups of coffee and 3.5 billion cups of tea are drunk in the world every day. What difference would it make to families if none of it was produced by slave labor? So look at the label for these products to make sure it states fair trade. Many ask, won't the cost of goods be a lot more expensive if all labor trafficking was eliminated? People assume we will pay a lot more for goods and services if we eliminate labor trafficking because they think a living wage is the same as in the developed country they live in. An average factory worker in China makes $27 a day, compared with $8.60 in Indonesia and $6.70 in Vietnam. Slaves are paid nothing. If the slaves in these countries were paid that country's living wage, it would have very little impact on the cost of goods that we receive, like clothing. A fair trade organic chocolate bar costs $2. So what we're talking about here is $1 more to make sure that little African boys go to school and are no longer forced to work in the chocolate fields with whip marks on their backs from the beatings where they were too tired to work and where they have bleeding feet because they are not given shoes. Fair trade and organic tend to go together, so you get double the value. As larger companies get involved, like Hershey's, who is making tremendous progress towards becoming 100% fair trade, the price difference will become insignificant. Where we really need to get to work is addressing slave labor in the fishing industry. Before you buy fish, go to the company website to look at their policy regarding making sure their supply chains are slave-free. If you are not satisfied, write to them. A great organization whose efforts you can join for this is Slave Free Seas. In the U.S., where we are finding a significant amount of labor trafficking is on farms. The good news is that the United Farm Workers have taken on labor trafficking. The UFW is in the process of launching a program called Reportalo, which means report it in English. They said their goal is to educate farm workers about the signs of trafficking. Workers are afraid that if they report an issue, there will be a backlash from the employer, and they're afraid that they won't be able to get a job somewhere else. The UFW says that they're trying to erase that fear and hope that with this program, they'll be able to investigate trafficking allegations and potentially help the employees take legal action. What about workers coming in from Mexico to work for businesses? Polaris is partnered with Consejo Cuidado to support Mexico's first national human trafficking hotline, 001-800-5533-000. Contratados.org provides workers an opportunity to report abuses so workers in Mexico can check out a company before they agree to come to the U.S. Their project is designed to reach migrant workers through the online site, a phone hotline, print materials, and a bi-national radio campaign. Global warming is making the poor in the third world poorer, as it is getting too hot to grow food in many places. In desperately poor countries, parents sell their oldest child to the sex traffickers so the rest of the family can eat. So in addition to raising awareness regarding fair trade, if you are a climate change advocate, your campaign to raise awareness will make a difference for poor people in the third world. If you are a business, you can find a complete list of goods produced by child or forced labor at this website, www.dol.gov. Then go through your inventory and check that list. For instance, shoes and bricks that come from Bangladesh are often made by child labor. So ask your supplier, how do they make sure that there is no slave or child labor for these products? Another thing we can do is support microloans, which go a long way to eliminate poverty, which is a major source issue for sex and labor trafficking in the third world. A microloan is a small loan to a family, like buying them a cow with repayment terms. Now that family can sell the milk and have money to buy food. The family is responsible for repaying the loan with terms that work for them, so they have their dignity without being burdened by the debt. Just Google microloans, nonprofits to find nonprofits that make it possible to issue microloans. For those of you who want to do a presentation on this subject, you can find the PowerPoint for this presentation and flyers at our website, throughgodsgrace.com. Just go to our educational resource tab and scroll down to the fair trade section on that page. So let's get to work and do our part to protect families in the third world from being exploited. Do support our work by subscribing to this channel and liking, commenting, and sharing this video. Thank you for watching.